Hey guys, today I'm going to be showing you how to use the SDSDInk interaction system on a empty scene so you can incorporate this into your own project. Alright, so the first thing we need to do, we're going to create a cube, we'll call it floor, make that 10, 10. We'll go into our demo materials, we'll just make that blue, just like that. Come over to our camera. We're going to align with view. This way our main camera is looking the same way as our scene camera. What we're going to do first, for our top-down example here, we're going to add an interactive controller. We're not worried about the camera controller yet, because that would be for like a first-person system. Even for a third-person system, you might even want to just negate this field here. So in the case of a top-down, the interact distance would be how far from the camera ahead can the player interact. So because we're top-down, we'll set it to 100. The default is set up for a first person. This is how far away from the camera before we automatically drop the object once we're holding it. So in this case, maybe 120. The mask is, maybe not everything, we'll set it to default, is what objects of what layer can be interacted with. If you would like it to also utilize a tag, you can do so, and you can set the tag here. We're going to set our main crosshair as just a plus here, and we'll need an image to display that. So we'll add a canvas with an image, we'll reset that. We'll set the width of our image to 32 by 32. We're going to set the default crosshair there. We'll preserve the aspect. We're going to go back to our controller and we'll drag the image we just created into this slot here. Okay, and finally, for our preliminary steps, we're going to want to add the input master. We are using the new input system, so if you need to use the old input system, you may need to make those small changes throughout the scripts. And the way that we're doing this is just through we're invoking Unity events. So for example, the action key here is registered when you push it, but then we can fire off this event here, which would either set it to true or false depending on whether or not you're pushing down or canceling. And then other scripts will look for that input. And it's done through a static instance. Okay, so now we have our input system incorporated. We have our camera and our main interaction system set up. All we need now is something to interact with. We'll put this on the floor. We're going to give it a draggable script component. Set the hint sprite so that when you hover over it to other for now. This is how fast the object moves to catch up with the mouse. We want it to be isDynamic because if it's not, that's typically reserved for things like doors, because you don't hold R to rotate a door, you just drag the door open or closed. IsDynamic means that yes, you can hold R to rotate the object, whether or not you want it to face the camera or not. If it is dynamic, we're locking the rotation while you're holding it as well. So depending on your use case, you might want to just play around with the IsDynamic and see what it does for you. In this particular case, that's all we needed. Of course, we don't want to forget, we did say we want to have a tag. So make sure you include your tag, and voila. Now let's say you don't want it to face the camera like that, and that's usually reserved for like a first-person thing where if you pick up an object, you really don't want it to be, rotating around itself. You kind of want to keep it facing the player as if the player is holding it and, staring at the object. So in this example here, we can disable the face camera, and now it'll keep its original orientation. And again, if we disable IsDynamic and we move it around, oops. You can see here that it has all of its rigid body capabilities here. However, there is no rotate. Right? Whereas with is dynamic on. If I hold R, I can rotate the object by holding R, release, perhaps hide an object underneath something. Okay, so that is the basic draggable object. Excuse me. Organized. Okay, so we'll put that over here. We're going to duplicate it, and what we're going to do next is we're going to set this to 0.2, 0.2. Then we're going to lift this up like that. What we're doing now is making a door frame. If you're wondering how I'm snapping it down like that, I just hold V. Okay, that's the door frame, and here is the actual door itself. Okay, and again, just to keep things organized, we'll use this darker blue for the frame. We'll rename our frame, and we'll also rename our door. Okay, on the frame, we don't need the draggable script. We'll set it to is kinematic because we don't want our door frame to be moving. We're going to remove the draggable object, and we're actually going to add the door controller. You can see here it's been extended to add a locked functionality because it's a door. Okay, we want our hint sprite to be open. If we hit play, we can now see whether we have this checked or not, that the door behaves sort of like a door. Sorta. So let's add a hinge. And I'll quickly give an explanation on how to set up a basic door here, but I mean, the hinge isn't exactly the easiest thing to comprehend right off the hop. But as long as we have our gizmos on, we might have a better idea. Oops, and also not in ortho mode. Alright, so this is its connected body over here, which is not what we want. We want this to be its connected body, so we take our frame and place it in here. We're going to uncheck the auto configure because that doesn't always work. And we're going to reset the anchored position. Now, what are these? Your anchor position is the door's center, or rather, where do you want the door to rotate? So typically you would want it to rotate on a hinge over here, and we'll set that up in a second. And the connected anchor is your frame, and where do you want the hinge on your frame to be? Alright, so typically a door works when both hinges are connected. So it doesn't need to be perfect, but you do want them to be relatively close to each other. Now how do we do that? Well, this is not world coordinates. This is relation to its size. So we'll take our connected anchor and we want it over here. If we were to set it to 1, it's basically doubling like its X position here. Alright, so it's over here. But if we were to set this to 0.5, right, you can see that it places it in the middle, or rather at its edge. And same with this one. We want this to be 0.5, but we want to negate that, so this way it's, you know, at the same place. So if we look at a top view here, and we were to move these over, and we hit play, the reason why it's not working actually is because we need to also set this to 1, which is the rotation axis. In order for it to work the way I was trying to make it work, it would need some different setup. Anyway, and again, you can visualize which way it's rotating. But now if we hit play, it'll rotate right at the middle. If you wanted it to be like a normal hinge right at the edge, you could just set that to 0.5 and set this to -0.5, I believe. Oh, this one also needs to be negative then. And then we hit play. the door will rotate that way. You can set this to -160. Because of the side we put the hinge on, it just makes sense to have it open this way. Okay, there's a basic door. As presented in our demo. I'll just show you here how this is working. It's using the same door controller, nothing different about that. The only thing that's different about it is the configurable joint. And the reason why I use the configurable joint for this, because you can limit one way of it moving, which is on the Y here, and then you can lock all the rest. The connected anchor and your linear limit play together, where you have your connected anchor here as well. It's basically like -0.3 and +0.3, and your anchor is always in the middle, and you kind of have to figure out the best way to configure it. But using the configurable joints, you can set up sliding doors, and actually I'll show you that. Right, so it opens. Okay, so we'll put this up here for now. And finally, what we're going to do is we're going to just duplicate this cube here. We'll give interactable object script, which is just an empty script deriving from the interactable class. What we're doing here is just referencing the interact function from the interactable class, and we're overriding it with whatever you would want it to do. So for example, if we hit play, we forgot to set the action sprite here. Okay, and then go over to the console, right? And when you click on it, win happens. So this could be good for buttons, you know, talking with NPCs, that sort of thing. Okay, and then let's say finally we'll move to the first-person implementation. So we'll come down here. I'll drag in my own player. And I'll just place him here for now. What we're going to do is we're actually going to remove this camera because we don't need it. As a matter of fact, I could just delete it for the sake of this example, because this player here has a camera already. But as you'll see, it doesn't have the interactive script attached directly to it, because it's actually this particular object here, the eye, that does all the rotating. So setup, similar to the last one. It doesn't necessarily need to be on there. But yes, similar to the last one, now only 2.5 units away from the camera, along with a drop distance of 4. Right? So if you pick up an object and you happen to have it hung up on a wall, once you get 4 units away, the player will drop it. So the way this works is that when you push R, it allows for the rotation to happen and prevents your player camera from having input. Because, I mean, typically you don't want to be rotating the object and spin your player around while you're doing so. To negate that, you just need to include your own player movement. If we look here, inside, I have this here, which is inside of the look function and prevents any camera interactions, and include the definition here at the top. Alright, and then you would want to copy your class name into here. Right. So for example, if you were using the Unity input system, you would want to get access to that camera, put the camera class here, and then inside of the camera class, you would need to include lock camera externally and include this particular bit of code, which again prevents the camera from having functionality. Just this little bit here. It just returns and keeps repeating at this point as long as this is true. Once it's false again, it'll skip it and continue. But yeah, if you were doing a third person, you wouldn't need this in here, because then your mouse would move freely unless it's locked. So I mean, really, this is mainly for like a first-person shooter, or maybe some other circumstances. Anyway, I really hope that this wasn't too confusing. If you do have any comments, feel free to leave them down there. You know what to do. Leave us a like, give us a sub, and again, if you have any further questions, feel free to contact us through the methods we've provided in the documentation, or again, just ask us here. And thank you for your time, and hope this asset works out for you. Have a nice day.